From the heart of South Asia to the crossroads of Central Asia to the turbulent Middle East and North Africa and the power corridors of the West, where narratives collide, perspectives matter and stories connect. This is Beyond Borders. I'm Omar Khalid, and during this hour we are going to bring stories to you that concern the world, that go beyond boundaries, but that also talk about things that matter to a changing world in these current times. We will begin with our top stories of the day. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has held talks with leaders of the Muslim countries, US President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly with a particular focus on the worsening Gaza crisis and climate change. The second day of the United Nations General Assembly's 80th session begins with the focus on global issues, particularly climate change. Earlier in the meeting with the IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva, our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif highlighted the economic toll of the recent floods and stressed that climate shocks must be factored into Pakistan's recovery and reforms. Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General is hosting a special high-level event on climate action. And in the Middle East, Israeli bombardment kills more than 50 people in war-battered Gaza, with the United Nations saying that the Israeli military is inflicting terror on the Palestinian population and forcing tens of thousands to flee. Earlier, US President Donald Trump met with Muslim leaders, including Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, to present his plan to end Israel's war on Gaza. Trump called the meeting extremely important and told the media that the Gaza war could potentially be ended soon. Our first story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Pakistan in the whole context of the United Nations General Assembly session and how important Pakistan's role has been. To talk on this in detail, we've been joined by none other than former Minister for Foreign Affairs and Defence, Khurram Dastgir Khan Sahab. He's right here with us in the studios. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us.
My pleasure.
Sir, Pakistan has often argued, I'd like to begin a bit with climate change and we'll go a little bit in details further. Pakistan has often argued, sir, that climate change means climate finance. Now, do you believe that the global north is actually going to deliver on the $100 billion pledge, let alone the trillions that are needed by the year 2035?
The record doesn't bear much optimism on that account. Not to forget that we were faced with another very large and disastrous floods just 3 years ago in 2022. And even there we had very good hopes that we will find a way to mitigate the effects of the flood through green finance. But very little of it has been forthcoming. So the question before us is, now that we have suffered another major flood, which has uprooted millions of Pakistanis, it's caused nearly $30 billion in flood damages, is to how to effectively advocate our cause that until green finance comes in, Pakistan simply does not have resources on its own to provide relief to its people, to rehabilitate them. They require rehabilitation housing, just in case of replacing their cattle, replacing the damages to their crops. But here I think Pakistan's newfound or rediscovered salience and relevance in world affairs might come to our rescue, because one of the strongest point always has been, 3 years ago it was the same case as of today, that Pakistan as a contributor to global climate change is negligible, is less than 0.5%. Wherein the major powers are the major polluters, they are the major contributors. And so Pakistan, despite being really negligible in causing the climate change, is now one of the frontline, foremost victims of that climate change. So some sort of major financing is due to Pakistan. But again, it's a tough case to make. But I expect that Prime Minister's very strong advocacy and the real hard work done by the climate change and finance ministries will bear fruit for Pakistan, if not immediately. But since, as I said, there have been 2 major floods within 3 years, it strengthens our case very strongly in terms of how we approach the world.
Speaking of approaching how to move forward as far as climate change and how Pakistan has been affected by it is concerned, this year COP30 is going to be held in Brazil. The main key word here is implementation. In your point of view, from your perspective, what would implementation look like for Pakistan, and what commitments in your point of view are non-negotiable when it comes to Pakistan?
Well, the first thing for Pakistan is a lot of work has been done. We must have some sense of satisfaction here that the Climate Change Ministry and Finance Ministry have done a lot of work. But we have to learn to use the jargon of climate change, learn to use how the international financing institutions are dealing with it, and to take our case in a format that is readily acceptable to them. That has been a challenge for Pakistan, that despite suffering so much back in 22 and now suffering again, the format of how we advocate our case has been lacking, or at least not as effective as it could have been. So I expect that, although it's not too far away, the COP, that once the ministers return from New York and have another look at how we are preparing, is to have our cases ready. Again, in terms of, I think one thing that is very clear that now needs to be done is we need geostrategic mapping of our waterways and how to ring fence them permanently so that the damage that occurs to lives of people, their livelihoods, that doesn't happen. Second is, of course, to create reservoirs and diversions all the way from north in Dir Chitral down to Tachabadin. So all the waterways, right from north to the south, we have to create in certain strategic, properly mapped areas, diversions and reservoirs. And that is a very, very expensive proposition, well beyond Pakistan's means. So that is as a ripe case for climate change. If we want to protect people's livelihoods and their lives, we have to be able to tap those funds and create those diversions and reservoirs, which also help us in normal years when we are short of water.
I agree on that, and let's hope that the world realizes the importance that needs to be given to Pakistan as far as climate change and the effects of climate change is concerned. But let's also talk about what is happening right now. The 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. World leaders have gathered in New York. Today is the second day as far as that session is concerned. Yesterday, a lot of important speeches were held. Today also, we are expecting many important speeches, one particularly on climate change. That is why I began with climate change. Gaza is being talked about, so is the Ukraine-Russia war. What are your expectations this time from UNGA 80?
Well, I'm hesitant to once again not be very optimistic, but truth is that the way major powers have paralyzed the United Nations in the last few years, like the United States has paralyzed the Security Council when it comes to Israel, and many other cases that we have seen in recent years. I think the forceful advocacy, again, I expect Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif to make that case for Gaza, for a statehood, a sustainable statehood for Palestine. But the issue is that the UN as an institution has to move beyond speech making. And that requires some commitment or a renewed commitment from P5, which as of today is not forthcoming, very frankly, because of the Russia, US, Europe issue over Ukraine and the paralysis over Palestine due to Israel. But in order to make UN more effective, also things have to be thought about in ways that don't require military intervention or UN Security Council. I think one very effective way in which UN has proved its worth is peacekeeping, in which Pakistan has been a major contributor for decades. So peacekeeping has to be thought out. I mean, peacekeeping would be a major part of any solution that is reached for Gaza and Palestine, because peacekeepers would be required to create that peace and create that space in which the final understanding can take place. So there are ways to make the UN more effective. but the traditional way of UN Security Council, even passing resolutions in Security Council has become very difficult now. So some hope will come out of the General Assembly where there are simpler rules for resolutions. But I think major powers, particularly Europe, I believe, has to carry more weight on its shoulders in order for the UN to become less paralyzed. Otherwise, the paralysis will continue, and it will just give a more excuse to leaders who want to get rid of the UN, like US President Donald Trump, who just said, despite the fact that he's the cause of the paralysis, he says that the UN isn't acting, and he has to act. So it's the question of how much importance major powers give to the multilateral organizations. Pakistan is committed to it. We need it to, first of all, the issue regarding the Indus Waters Treaty, because we need respect for international treaties, and that respect can only come out from multilateral arena, not individual countries.
All right. Khurram Dastgir Saab, the speech that our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is going to give in a couple of days' time, in fact very, very soon, is being already looked upon by world leaders because of the 4-day war with India, because of the way Pakistan made not only a strategic name for itself in the Committee of Nations, but also is being looked upon in a very different light on as far as its posturing, its diplomatic posturing, its strategic posturing is concerned. How crucial is this speech at the UNGA from Pakistan's perspective is going to be as far as Shehbaz Sharif Sahab is concerned? Also, we know he's going to highlight the human rights violations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and ensure that the international community does not ignore the principles stance as far as Pakistan is concerned.
Well, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is going to speak as the Prime Minister of a nation that has renewed its credibility in world affairs, which has demonstrated its ability to forestall an enemy 10 times larger than itself. So that renewed credibility and ability, which has now been reinforced by the Pak-Saudi agreement of a few days ago, makes Shehbaz Sharif's speech very important. What I am seeking, and I hope it's part of his speech, is that not only does he highlight the massive human rights violations in Indian occupied Jammu Kashmir, on which there are now have been for a few years 2 major UN reports, 2018 and 19. So I hope he will draw attention to those. But the major part should be on first this very irresponsible holding in abeyance of Indus Waters Treaty, which in fact not only threatens livelihoods of millions, it actually threatens the whole Indus civilization. So I hope that will be a major part of it. The second I expect will be a major part of it is India's cross-border terrorism inside Pakistan. What we saw in Jafar Express. There has also been an assassination campaign that Indians admit, actually, the Indian state has admitted that it's running an assassination campaign inside Pakistan. And this now long record of India harboring and supporting terrorists who kill innocent Pakistanis and want to disrupt the economic progress and stability that we have achieved. So I think that too is a case that desperately needs to be made and remade again and again in order for the world to realize that it's not just Canada, it's not just the United States or Australia where India is running assassination campaigns. Actually, the most assassinations that India itself confesses to having done is inside Pakistan.
That is so true, Khurram Dastgir Sahab, and we are all looking forward to the speech of Shehbaz Sharif Sahab and how that will be highlighted in the international arena and how things might change as finally as far as Pakistan's highlighting of the reality regarding India is concerned. Thank you very much, Khurram Dastgir Sahab, to have given us the time to have come all the way to the studios. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you on different important issues, and I hope we get the opportunity opportunity to talk again very soon. Thank you
Pleasure
very
all
much,
mine.
sir.
Thank you so much
very
for
sir.
inviting me.
We'll be back after a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for more coming your way. Welcome back, and today is day 2 of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, and all eyes are also on the different leaders who are going to talk about the important topics that concern their country and their country's points of views on the matters that are plaguing the world, including Palestine, including the Middle East, and of course the Russia-Ukraine conflict, among others. But one important thing that is also going to be discussed today is climate. Before we just go, I just wanted to add the little meetings that our Prime Minister, important meetings that our Prime Minister has had, whether it be with the US President Donald Trump, whether it be with the Chinese Premier, whether it be with the President of the World Bank or the IMF Managing Director or Austria's Chancellor. The meetings have been extremely important, not only highlighting Pakistan's perspectives on important affairs, but also to build upon the bilateral collaboration and cooperation with all of these important organizations and countries. One important thing that Pakistan wants to highlight is climate change. We've been affected by it in 2022, before that, and now in 2025 because of the floods and the excessive rains as well. There is going to be a very important climate event in which new NDCs and targets for the year 2035 are going to be discussed. Now, to highlight that, and what could be the probable issues being discussed in those and what needs to be highlighted. We've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. In the studios, we've been joined by Iqbal. He's an environmental lawyer, a regular and a very important guest when it comes to climate change. Thank you very much, Sarma, to have joined us. Online, we've been joined by Shabbir. She's an environmentalist and also a very important voice when it comes to climate and environment. Mariam, thank you very much to have joined us as well. We'll begin with you, Sarmad. Many countries are submitting new NDCs with goals for the year 2035, and this is what's going to be discussed also today in the important meeting. What is the moral obligation? I'd like to quote unquote moral obligation of the high emitting nations, and there are some very important ones that we've discussed in the past as well, and how important is their obligation to submit far more ambitious targets for the year 2035 compared to countries such as ours, who are the least of the emitters, rather than pushing for incremental change.
Thank you, Omar. The word moral.
That's why I highlighted it twice.
Within the climate conversation or discourse and the commitments, morality has lost space. We are really struggling to ensure moral standards, ethical standards, commitments, moral-backed commitments, I would say, all of these. And when it comes to the NDCs, our commitments did we morally adhere to them or not? Those are a bit of a far cry, I would say. However, I still have hope, as Dastgir have said, he's a bit skeptical in that, but I still have hopes that the morality would be revived again, and after seeing the transition within the atmosphere as well as the climate conditions faced by the globe, not saying Pakistan, by the globe, whether it's wildfire, whether it's rising temperatures, whether it's rainfall, whether it's hurricanes, whether it's floods like Pakistan, we've seen it all. Everyone has seen it. So I think now is the time that the national leaders or the leaders coming together at the COP summit or the COP30 event, they need to morally bind themselves with regards to their commitments to adhere to the commitments that they've made in the past COPs.
Ooh, huge responsibility.
It is a huge responsibility, and that is why I said morality needs to come first at this COP and others events.
Okay, Mariam, coming to you, I'd like to also understand, developing countries often lack finance and cite a lack of finance, including Pakistan. We've seen how Pakistan has been affected by it as the main barrier to ambitious climate action. Now, how can we ensure that this 1.3 trillion annually by 2035 roadmap becomes finally a realistic one and enforceable one and equitably distributed one?
Well, Omar, I think that's not going to happen because we see that the Trump government is out of Paris Agreement, which was a major expected funder when it comes to climate finance. But it's kind of opportunity for other countries like China and European Unions to contribute much towards these climate finance to show that they care for the environment and climate change. So there's going to be definitely impact of how US is right now treating climate and environment. And we saw the statement of President Trump on the issue as well. And he's calling climate change and science something which is unrealistic, which is like mind-boggling to say such a thing at UN platform. But I think, as your earlier guest said, I think hope is the only thing we can have. But along with that, we can have bilateral and diplomatic relations. We can use those channels to kind of fetch these kind of funds, when it comes to like reparations in Pakistan, of course, because we need to build back our people who are repeatedly hit by flooding. Our economy is impacted because of flooding. Our health sector is in crisis because of flooding. Our infrastructure related to education, trade, everything is like underwater because of flooding and climate change. In summer, it's because of heat waves. So definitely we need funds, and that's our right under Paris Agreement and climate finance. I think diplomatic ties and consulates abroad in Pakistan, I see potential in them, just not the Conference of Paris, because we shouldn't be waiting only for Conference of Paris to materialize these kind of funds, but in the form of smaller projects. We can always bring funds bilaterally, having meetings with each counter governments wherever our consulates are, so that we can at least work in small portions. But talking about like bigger chunks of money, which is required in trillions, I don't see that happening because it has not happened in 30 years of negotiations so far.
All right. Coming to Sarmad Saab, transparency and trust are issues that have been recurring as far as COPs are concerned, as far as, climate change are concerned, as in general, or the pledges, keyword pledges again that have been made for Pakistan but never actually translated or implemented. What mechanisms could be or should be built as far as the new NDCs are concerned to guarantee independent verification and accountability?
Pledges is a keyword.
Again,
but all my answers would revolve around the pledges.
All right.
Pakistan's pledge in the NDCs was both conditional and unconditional. So for the unconditional one, we have been making headway. However, for the conditional ones, we were seeking support of external actors, external governments, external financial institutions. That hasn't materialized, leaving us only in the sphere of doing the unconditional work from the money that we have at hand, from the resources that we have at hand. Now, having said that, there were many pledges after many COPs. And then the LND, the Loss and Damage Fund, that was a big pledge after 22.
The Paris Agreement before that.
The Paris Agreement before that, and others and others and others. But coming to the COP20, the LND or the Loss and Damage Fund, how much of a pledge was made and what did we get? That is another question. Now, coming to the question about accountability and transparency, unless and until we have localized or tailor-made programs suiting the global agenda, we won't be able to have accountability measures in place, and that is the challenge that both parties would face, Pakistan as well as the global north as well. The third thing is with regards to the commitment around program funding. Like we have been given loans, we have been extended loan facilities, but we haven't been given grants. Pakistan is seeking grants, not loans. Because if we continue to seek loans, we are continuing to be under debt, and our environmental impacts or our challenges are exasperating. It's multiplying every year. And this year, NDMA, as in their briefing, informed that the next year is going to be 16 to 23% more rainfall. So we should expect more devastation in the next year than we saw in this year. The financial losses in 22 were 15 billion in losses and 15 million in damages. Now, this year's PDNA amendment is coming up. We don't have figures right now, but it's going to be huge as well, adding to what the previous discourse or previous shortfall was. So it's clubbing together, it's multiplying, And this multiplication is going to be devastating for us, and clubbed with the debt situation that we'll be facing, that's going to make things very traumatic, as well as very challenging, as well as very difficult to manage at all levels. And having said that, the accountability measures, if they're not in place for the polluters, this thing is going to continue, whether it's COP30, whether it's 31, whether it's 32.
And the whole reasoning behind also gathering nations for COP kind of dilutes itself, doesn't it? If you can't really go for all the action that needs to be taken, if you can't follow up on that action, then why even have COPs?
No, it's like it's like setting the agenda. Or the nations that are devastated by the impacts of climate change needs to form a coalition, a stronger one, and need to strengthen their voice. Now, having said strengthening their voice, they have to have a very clear agenda of what they want. Their ask should be very critical. Their ask should be very clear. Their ask should be clubbed with the accountability. Their ask should be clubbed with the morality as well. Their ask should be clubbed with ethical standards that the other nations have to follow. All this is explained in the Paris Agreement and the agreements following that.
But you know, coming back to Paris Agreement that dates back to so many years, that still has to be implemented in letter and principle. Mariam, I'd like to understand something regarding the future COP that is going to happen in Brazil, the COP30. The key word there is again implementation. And implementation is a word that has been lacking as far as climate justice or climate finance is concerned. What tangible deliveries could emerge from today's important meeting as far as these new NDCs and 2035 targets are concerned at the UNGA to make this label of implementation credible?
Well, Omar, I think we see that wherever US is lacking in terms of climate ambitions and targets and meeting, whether it's finance or research or climate related initiatives, we see that China is kind of filling that void. So this is kind of opportunity for the rest of the world to chip in and kind of set the precedent and set an example. And I think that's exactly, I'm expecting that's exactly going to happen at COP30 as well. I think that's the only platform where developing and least developing countries or global south countries, they can make the rich world accountable because of their emissions. Because if we get away with that platform too, you know, there is no other platform to make them accountable. Well, there are going to be repercussions, as I said, that the major funder is the US, which already has like taken out climate change related funds from a lot of UN institutions as well. So lots of layoffs are already there, and UN hosts these COPs, you know, every year. So there's going to be impact on arrangements as well, but arrangements are always made with the respective government, whoever is like hosting. So this year is Brazil, and we already see like housing crisis over there. But I think that's not the only problem. The negotiations. I think I see that US would be like silent again the way it was at COP29 again. They did not contribute much at that time because government was changing, and everybody saw and predicted that, you know, as soon as the government would change, Trump would be like out of this Paris Agreement. So I think moving forward, China and other countries, the Bloc, I think they will again try to put pressure on like rest of the world to contribute towards mitigation, adaptation, technology transfer, more research on climate change and more collaboration, but more of climate change as a human right. I see like those discussions happening around a lot, and also like how again like limiting 1.5 degree, and some parts of the world it's already exceeded 1.5. You know, in 17 US state we saw that they were like more warmer than ever before. So I think those discussions would continue, that how more renewable energy projects and initiatives could be taken. But again, the major contributor after China, the US, it will keep emitting fossil fuel emissions. So I think it's not going to be a lot different than rest of the COPs. There would be failures, there would be some successes in terms of like small projects, and that's how every COP has been so far.
All right. Thank you very much, Mariam Shabbir, to have joined us online, and thank you very much, Samad Iqbal, also to have joined us here. The gap between climate ambition and implementation is extremely large, and that is what needs to be bridged. And I hope that today's meeting on the NDCs and 2035 targets is going to, if not achieve that, at least work towards that. Even if they are baby steps, they are steps that need to be taken before it's way too late, before it's unmanageable. Thank you very much again to have joined us. We have to go to a short break. We'll be right back. Now we come to the Middle East and North Africa, but of course this is all jumbled up with the West, because what has happened at the United Nations General Assembly is that the US President Donald Trump has called in a separate meeting with the Muslim leaders, including our very own Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, to discuss the future of Gaza. To discuss that in detail, we've been joined by two guests, one in the studio and one online. In the studio, we've been joined by our dear friend Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, who we regularly talk to as far as foreign affairs are concerned, because she is a very renowned analyst. Thank you very much, Dr. Sahiba, to have joined us. We've also been joined by Dr. Haissam Bou-Said, who is the United Nations IHRC Head of Mission in Geneva. Dr. Haissam Bou-Said, thank you very much to have joined us as well. We'll begin with you, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha. How does Trump's sudden reliance on Muslim leaders, bringing them together on the sidelines of the UNGA of all moods, including our very own Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, contrast A, with his speech on day one, and B, with his intention as far as the Middle East is concerned? Is he having second thoughts? Is he genuinely moving towards some kind of solution for the Middle East?
Well, it's a very tricky question, because he's completely unpredictable person, and as far as his speech is concerned, it was, it was showing the true self of Mr. Trump, being, thinking about that America only. But however, his sideline meeting shows that he's interested about the peace and stability, especially in the Gaza, and his the America's strong upper hand on all the happening around the world. So that's why he met with the leaders, selective leaders from the Muslim countries, and he talked about that it should be the end of war in Gaza. But however, he was having some thoughts for the Israel as well, because he was talking about the hostages, and so he was not that much concerned about the casualties, and brutality Israel being done in the Gaza. Yeah, he was very much concerned about the hostages, and it was, I think, it shows that his tilt is toward the Israel. But why he was meeting them? Because he knows that he has lost their trust, because being a strong ally, Qatar has been attacked by Israel, and that's something it shattered the West Arab countries' trust on America, and he wanted to bring it back, and that's why it was to bring them all.
It was basically a trust-building exercise,
yes,
in your point of view. Dr. Haissam Bou-Said, I'd like to understand this whole context of bringing leaders from countries such as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Indonesia. What, in your point of view, is the importance of that, a meeting that is convened by the US President Donald Trump, and that is going to talk, or has talked as we speak, as far as the future of Gaza is concerned? Can these nations help Donald Trump broker peace?
Good evening to you and to your guest. Well, in fact, leaders from Arab and Muslim states will press for a permanent ceasefire. This is our belief, and humanitarian aid as well. And it is a path towards a two-state solution. The US and I believe its allies are expected to stress post-war governance and security, excluding Hamas. Okay. For instance, the Ukraine war will seek to maintain global backing, presenting the war as a defining test of sovereignty and international law, while global South, partners against sanctions are Western influence. Now, in brief, if you want, or the overall expectation, the session will is being gathered with the Trump and the Arab and Muslims head of state. It was on the session that will expose deep geopolitical divides between West versus other states. and different blocks over Gaza as well between them. So this is the discussion that was maintained, but also it highlights urgent demands for humanitarian action from some Arab and Muslim head of states. Symbolically, it will test whether the UN can still act as a platform for mediation amid great power and revivals.
All right. Dr. Haissam Bou-Said, I'd also like to understand, bringing countries, including Pakistan, and of course, Donald Trump asking, I don't know whether he asked for advice, but of course, after the meeting, there were a lot of positive sentiments that emanated from the Turkey side as well. How important are these voices that were brought together by Donald Trump going to be for the future of the Middle East, in your point of view, as somebody who's been witnessing this genocide unveil?
Well, I don't want to be too much optimist, okay? Because the way we know President Trump and his duplication in handling these issues, I believe that we cannot expect better than what we have heard from him. And there is nothing more to be added to what he has said, because I believe that these issues or the main issues that should be implemented is not going to be revealed in public. But according to what we have received, information, leaked information, if you want to, on this these kind of meetings, or what happened exactly, is that he informed these Arabs that, okay, he had the intention to stop the war in Gaza, but it is also related to other issues. And these other issues are the main points that blow up the whole process. So because he got to go back also to Israel and see exactly what's going to happen on the other side. Because Israel
questions, Dr. Haissam Bou-Said, we don't know what could happen, what could not happen, how all this meeting is going to lead as far as maybe finding a solution to the current imbroglio or the state of affairs as far as the Middle East is concerned. Thank you very much, Dr. Haissam Bou-Said, to have joined us and to have given us your eminent point of view. Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, do you feel Pakistan and the other Muslim nations, irrespective of this meeting with Donald Trump, can navigate the tension between backing Trump's plan as far as whatever he has in store for the Middle East is concerned, and upholding the long-standing demand for a sovereign Palestinian state, putting into context all that Israel has been saying as well, the negation of the two-state solution as well as the state of Palestine?
Well, we see a clear divide. There are the states who are actively talking about recognizing Palestine as a state. But however, there are still those states, those who are reluctant to do that, because they say that there should be a proper solution about the Hamas, because they think it's an aggressive entity and it can ruin the whole peace process. And there is another interesting thing, and that is, Mr. Trump is he's talking about peace process and he's very sure about it, but he was very sure about the Ukraine peace process. So here's the comparison. He said, Mr. Putin is a very good friend of mine and I'm going to end the war in, let's say, I think 30 days. And the claims are still the claims. Similarly, the question is Israel going to accept all those peace deals that America is going to propose to them? Because that's a big question.
So many questions, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, and I don't know how things are going to move forward. There's a lot of ambiguity between the positives and the negatives, but I'd rather stay cautiously optimistic than pessimistic and look at the glass as half full rather than half empty. Let's pray and let's hope for the best at the end of UNGA 80, and that some kind of solution comes to all of these issues, whether it be the Middle East or it be the Russia-Ukraine. Thank you very much, Dr. Gul.i.Ayesha Bhatti, to have joined us. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope we'll get more of you in the coming days as well. That brings us to the end of today's Beyond Borders, ladies and gentlemen. We talk beyond borders, we talk beyond boundaries, and we talk about issues that pertain to the world in general and those that could also change the perspective of the world and of our continent as well. Till tomorrow, Allah Hafiz.